How many millennials out there remember the Goosebumps girl meme? Remember that meme where you just say everything with an R in it? For some reason, I just can't stop using that meme with the title of this movie, Dune Part 2. Hopefully the majority of you didn't just click off and cringe, and I can continue with the review. So, Dune is back with another installment in the franchise with Dune Part 2, aptly named. And as one Facebook user I heard describe it as, the Empire Strikes Back of this generation. I wouldn't go that far, but there definitely were some improvements over Dune Part 1, and some things that I don't think were as good as Dune Part 1. One of the biggest complaints that I had with the original, and honestly a complaint that I can't find anywhere else, so maybe I'm just in the minority here, is the last 30 minutes of Dune Part 1. I just didn't find it to be particularly engaging. I kind of thought that the movie came to a firm conclusion, because we already knew that it was Part 1, when Paul and his mother crash landed in the desert. I thought that was kind of a good cliffhanger, and there honestly wasn't really much story left to tell. So when the movie continued and continued and continued for another 30 minutes, I kind of sat in my seat in the movie theater saying to myself, this almost feels like a completely different movie. Not stylistically or anything, the plot and the introduction of new characters and everything that was going on just kind of felt completely different. It feels like it could maybe be the start of Dune Part 2. So one of the clear improvements over the original in Dune Part 2 is that it doesn't waste a single minute. There really is no way that you could possibly be bored. The opening scene alone is just a masterclass in cinematography and directing and writing and editing, all the good things that make for a good film. It's exciting, it's tense, it immediately brings you back into the world. It picks up right where Dune Part 1 left off. The opening scene alone is great. But who is even better? And I know I like using this phrase, but I just can't help but saying, because it's true. The guy who stole the show, Austin Butler. My goodness, he was having the time of his life playing this role. And I feel like a lot of actors, whenever they get to play a psychopath, that's kind of the beauty. That's like the beautiful thing about acting, is that you're in a safe space, so you can sort of act the way that is not at all socially acceptable, but instead of people judging you for it, they're going to pay you for it. Kind of reminds me of like Bill Skarsgård with It, or Jack Nicholson in The Shining, or whatever it might be. But whenever actors get to play psychopaths, they just have a great time, because it's like, well, that's the story, and I'm not actually doing it, I'm just pretending to, and they're paying me for it, and everyone's gonna love me for it, so here we go. I like how they kind of built up Austin Butler's character as being a psychopath, which is incredible when you think about the world of Dune. Like in the world of the Sardaukar, like everyone's a psychopath, but they're saying like, well, he in particular is psychotic. That, as an audience member, just gives you a little taste of just how crazy he is. And he is. The man has no regard for human life at all. The complete opposite. He kind of views life as completely disposable, and he enjoys taking it from people. In fact, he has a lot of elements to the Joker, a lot of similar elements to the Joker, I would say. One of the best scenes in the movie is when he's in this giant coliseum, and it's his debut of sorts, and they send out a bunch of slaves for him to fight, but they drug the slaves to guarantee that he will win. In a way, it almost makes you like him a little bit, because some villains are cowards, like they pose in a certain way, but they're actually not very likable because they have no spine, they have no chutzpah. But you as an audience member are like, okay, well, this guy is might be a psychopath, but at least he's courageous. The next and most obvious achievement, closely tied for first with Austin Butler's performance, is the cinematography. Denis Villeneuve definitely knows how to pick his cinematographers, and he absolutely knows what he's doing with this movie, particularly since it's Part 2 after he did Part 1, and he's done other movies with fantastic cinematography, such as Arrival. And Greg Fraser, I believe is his name, deserves all the accolades he's received and all the accolades that he hopefully will receive. The movie definitely has a lot more moments in this one that are just purely for fun. Probably the most obvious one being when Paul rides a worm, which I think you might have all seen in the trailer. I will say I kind of chuckled a little bit when they, in all seriousness, referred to it as like a grandfather worm or like a grandpa worm. I don't know, just the attachment of that word with a worm just makes me kind of laugh. Like I just imagine a worm with like a mustache and like wiry glasses and a cigar, just like reading a book by the fire or something. I mean, it's kind of fun, I guess. But I'm also a little curious, because it's like, how in this universe do you call a certain size of worm? Like all they have are the thumper pulsating things. So like, how can you call certain sizes of worms? The story itself remains relatively uncluttered, relatively. Like, the first time I saw Dune Part 1, I mostly understood it, and then the second time I watched it, I completely understood it. But there were just some elements with Dune Part 2 where, like, the first time I saw it, I was confused, and then I saw it a second time, and I was like, I'm still confused. So maybe I'm just dumb, but I feel like the movie was just a little too convoluted. Perhaps my questions will be answered in Part 3. The emotional investment in the characters is overshadowed, quite literally, by the grand scale of the film and its powerful music, once again masterfully delivered by Hans Zimmer. It wasn't too different from the original, kind of like Brad McCreary's score for God of War Ragnarok, but it's ultimately a minor complaint. This is not to say that you don't care about the characters at all, it's just that the characters are not really the anchoring point of the movie, which can make for some strange moments. Like, one of the main characters has what I consider to be like a jarring shift in their particular motivation. It's not strange enough to take away from the overall story, but it was just something that was noticeable. The third installment, Dune Part 3, is supposed to be an all-out war, which I'm looking forward to. Hopefully Denis Villeneuve is still attached to it. And hopefully we also don't get a Battle of the Five Armies situation, which I do not blame Peter Jackson for. That was 100% studio interference, and they kind of forced the film onto Peter Jackson. The poor man, there's YouTube videos about behind-the-scenes stuff. The poor man was getting like less than 4 hours of sleep a night. He was working nonstop for 20 hours a day, and he single-handedly made it decent. He single-handedly made it watchable. He salvaged it all. So I do not blame Peter Jackson for the mediocrity of the Five Armies. If it hadn't been for Peter Jackson, Battle of the Five Armies would have been a complete disaster. But anyway, I'm giving Dune Part 2 an 8.0 out of 10. So have you seen Dune Part 2? Are you looking forward to Part 3? I know I am. Whatever you are thinking, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next cinematic adventure.